There was a game that Alvin loved playing with his mother. They called it the tummy game. Though it was hardly a game in the usual sense, there were no winners or rules, no points to earn or timers to beat. It was just a thing they did, a ritual of sorts before his bedtime. Ever since he was born, he could remember playing this sweet game with his mom. His mother, Kendra, had a soothing voice that made all of his bad days feel better immediately. Her skin was always warm and freckled from the sun. Alvin loved counting the freckles on his mother's cheeks when she would hold him. He used to poke at them with his finger, and his mother would smile this radiant smile at him. Each evening after bath time, after teeth were brushed and pajamas pulled on, Alvin would climb onto her bed with a plush toy under one arm and a look of drowsy anticipation in his eyes. He knew he would get to play his favorite game with her. She would pull the quilt over them and lie beside him, one hand resting on his small round belly as she lifted her button-up pajamas top to reveal her plump belly to him. Then came the circling. Her fingers would trace slow, soothing spirals around his navel, and he would shiver with delight. He did not know it yet when he was a child, but that sensation would become what he would crave when he would go out seeking for love through his girlfriends. It tickled, but not in the silly way that made you squeal and squirm. This was the soft, comforting kind of tickle, the kind that made your breath slow and your eyelids heavy. To Alvin, her touch felt like magic. Alvin would respond to her motherly touch by poking her belly button with his index finger as well. Sometimes he would bend his index finger in a come-hither position and really dig into his mother's navel. She would giggle the same way he would when she poked his belly button. Their nightly giggling created a connection between mother and son that got stronger with each poke and belly button play event. Kendra would sometimes whisper nonsense stories while tracing those little spirals. She spoke of hidden doors behind belly buttons, of dream tunnels and tummy fishies that carried sleeping children across lakes inside her stomach. To anyone else, it might have sounded like silly bedtime fluff. But to Alvin, lying there with her hand on his belly and her words painting fantasy stories inside of his mind, it felt real. And so time being what it is, moved on. Alvin grew bigger and bigger, and a little older each day. His limbs were longer, his voice deepened, and he was understanding the world outside more and more each day. He no longer asked for the tummy game. Although he still enjoyed his belly button play sensations and occasionally craved it, he felt he was much too old for that game as a teenager. He stopped crawling into bed beside his mother. He spent more time behind closed doors, his eyes flicking from screen to screen, his mind full of distractions that made all the old stories his mother used to tell him feel far away. But Kendra noticed, although she never said a word. She saw it in the way his laughter changed. Alvin became shorter-tempered and sharper with his words towards her. He was going through puberty, and she was trying to be accepting of the lack of love she was now receiving from her precious baby boy. Alvin seemed to dismiss her love now, in the way he shrugged her off when she reached to touch his forehead. She kept her hands to herself more often now, fingers itching to trace those old spirals but hesitating in the air. Alvin, meanwhile, found himself searching for something he couldn't name. He tried holding hands with new people, tried kissing both boys and girls in the back of movie theaters, tried laughter that didn't quite reach the center of him. Nothing stuck. No one knew how to make him feel the way he used to feel, the way he felt with his mother. It was a safe, grounded, glowing feeling that came with unexplainable peace. He longed for that feeling with someone his own age but fell short each time he seeked for it. At night, in the deepest part of sleep, memories would come to him uninvited. A trace on his stomach, a hum in the dark, the rustle of the quilt. Although he would wake up some nights with the occasional wet dream, there was something else that woke him up more often. He'd wake up with a strange ache in his chest and an itchy feeling in his belly button. The kind of itch that only a mother knew how to caress away. He never told anyone about it. He didn't even tell himself. The dream arrived without warning. It came on a night like any other, and Alvin was laying in his bed with thoughts unraveling in loops too tangled to trace. So, he decided to open his bedroom door and walk into his mother's bedroom and crawl into her bed for the first time since he was a child. His mother awoke suddenly, sensing the troubled feeling in her son. Kendra was wearing the oversized oatmeal-colored sweater he remembered from years ago, the one that always fell off her shoulder when she cooked on rainy days. Her hair was pulled into a messy knot, with loose strands that fell out of the hair tie as she was dozing off to sleep. Alvin lay in her bed motionless for a moment, his breath caught in his chest. His mother turned toward him as if she'd been waiting. Though no words passed between them, her expression said everything. An invitation, an understanding. Alvin cuddled into his mother's arms beside her, just as he had so many nights when he was small. Without needing to ask, her hand came to rest lightly on his stomach. For a long time, they simply breathed in unison together. With both their eyes still closed, Kendra's fingers slowly began to move on his growing body. Slow, deliberate circles. Spirals radiating outward from his navel, then tightening again. The rhythm was familiar to Alvin, not just in a physical way but deep within the emotional memory of his body. It was the same motion that had once calmed him to sleep when he was 5, soothed his stomach when it ached at 6, and reminded him he was safe at 7. The feeling returned, like a warmth spreading from the center of his being, radiating out from the middle of his belly button. Each spiral of her fingertip left behind a trace of warmth, faint at first, then warmer the more his mother traced around his navel. Alvin looked down as if he were dreaming. He started at his mother's gentle hands tracing the circle around his stomach. He swore he could see a gentle glow coming from her hands as they moved. And as her hand rested again, palm open across his belly, he noticed something impossible. Her own stomach was glowing. At the center of her abdomen, just above the waistband of her sweater, a soft silver light pulsed beneath the skin. It shimmered faintly at first, then gradually it began to widen. Her belly button, the same one he'd poked and teased as a child, was also changing. It did not stretch or contort in a grotesque way. Instead, it unfurled. It opened like a lotus blooming in slow motion, each fold revealing layers of more light and shimmer that no real body could ever contain. The light from within it grew stronger, spilling out into the bedroom like a mist. Alvin's mouth dropped in awe. Was he dreaming? The glow spread across the room, casting everything in dreamlike golden rays. The bed, the rug, even the walls became illuminated. Alvin looked back over at his mother. His mother's face remained serene and knowing, but her features now seemed part of the dreamscape. Alvin felt an emotional, almost spiritual pull in his stomach. It was a quiet nudge at his core. The doorway, if it could be called that, was opening before him just like in the old story his mother used to tell him. And it was not just a hole in space, but a passage woven out of memory and love and something deeper. Some ancient, maternal knowing that existed beyond flesh. He took one last look at his mother. Her eyes were radiant and full of something he could not name, locked with his. There was no question, no need for words. He knew what he wanted to do. He took his first step inside her belly button. And then the world was swallowed in light. The light engulfed Alvin completely. It wasn't like stepping through a doorway. It was more like sinking gently and gradually into something warm and living. There was no sensation of falling, no weightlessness. Instead, he moved downward as though he were drifting in thick golden water. His limbs slowed by the softness and squishiness of his mother's stomach lining. When his feet finally touched something solid, it didn't feel like earth or stone. Felt alive and moving. The space around him still glowed with a dim, amber light. The walls were rhythmically expanding and contracting in slow waves, like the breathing of some enormous creature. And then he realized they were breathing in unison again, just like when he was a child. The walls, the air, the light itself, everything was part of a great living rhythm that kept his mother's body alive and well. He was watching his mother's life force in action. He was inside his mother. The place had shape, texture, and depth. Above him, the ceiling curved in arcs like the inside of a ribcage. He moved forward, drawn by instinct. The deeper he went, the more the air changed. It became thicker but sweeter. The amber light turned to rose gold. Along the path, strange things appeared. Objects suspended in the pulsing walls. He saw his old stuffed bear, one of Kendra's silver rings, a drawing he made in 2nd grade. Memories flooded his thoughts as he watched and relived them one by one as they were preserved in his mother's warmth. He reached out to touch the old stuffed bear he had. As his fingers brushed the glowing warm air, the bear trembled, and then, as if triggered by his touch, the walls themselves rippled and a doorway opened. Without hesitation, he stepped through. On the other side, the space was different. He stood at the edge of a glowing lake, its surface smooth and shiny like glass. It was Kendra's stomach juices bubbling inside of her. Alvin could hear the sounds of gentle gurgling noises as her stomach sloshed with love for him. The lake reflected not just his image but different versions of him. Alvin could see himself at age 4 in a red dinosaur shirt, at 8 years old with grass stains on his knees, at the ripe age of 13 sitting silently at the dinner table, his eyes hollow after a fight with Kendra. All of them looked back at him with quiet understanding of how he became who he was today. Suddenly, the lake began to bubble a little more. He stepped back. From the center, something strange emerged. It was a tall and luminous shape with no face, yet he knew instantly what it was. He could feel the strong connection it had to his own belly button when it emerged. It was his mother's love. Not Kendra herself, but a piece of her made of memories and care and sleepless nights. The figure held in its translucent hands a coiled ribbon of silver light, and it stretched it out before him. The ribbon uncoiled midair, forming a path, a bridge of light over the lake. Alvin stepped onto it without fear. With each step, the images in the lake below shifted into different memories he had lived in his life. He saw his mother reading alone in the kitchen after he'd gone to bed. He saw her crying quietly in the laundry room. He saw the way she looked at him from behind the window the first time he left for a school trip. These weren't his memories, they were hers. He nearly stumbled at that realization. His chest ached with sudden understanding of the hurt he had caused his mother. The love he'd received had not been effortless. It had cost her something in the form of patience, sacrifice, and fear. And yet she had given it freely, just like any good mother had. The bridge ended at a chamber unlike anything before. It was shaped like a heart but vast. At the center of the chamber was a spiral staircase made of soft, glowing tendons. And wrapped around it, sleeping, was something strange and wondrous. It was a creature made entirely of laughter. It looked like a cloud given shape, shifting and transparent, but he could hear it breathing low, slow chuckles that trembled in his bones. He recognized its sound. It was the laughter he and his mother had shared all those years. Every giggle, every snort, every uncontrollable laugh during bedtime stories or car rides. It had formed this creature. The laughter creature stirred as Alvin approached it. It didn't speak. It didn't have to. It rose, floated around him once, and then rushed into him through his belly button in a swirl of warm air. Alvin's lungs filled with it. His ribs buzzed. Alvin felt this feeling inside his body that needed to come out, and he couldn't contain himself any longer. Alvin bursted out with laughter, the same way he would laugh with his mother when he was a kid. And suddenly, he remembered how it felt to be completely, joyfully, childishly safe again. Then came another shift. The walls trembled. The pulsing rhythm that had guided him until now quickened. The golden glow grew warmer and hotter. The chamber began to steam. The laughter creature inside him twisted uneasily. Something was wrong. From high above, Alvin heard a deep, groaning sound like the closing of an ancient creaking gate. The breathing rhythm of his mother's body was quickening, and beneath his feet, the floor became slippery with fluids. The scent in the air curdled from sweetness into something acidic. He was no longer just a visitor. He was overstaying. He forgot for a moment that his mother's soul, body, and memories were alive. But like any body, it had rules and limits. It could nurture him, but it could also digest him just as quickly. He turned back, but the spiral staircase had melted into the floor. The bridge was gone. The laughter creature had vanished. He was alone, and the warmth around him was rising into heat. The walls were pulsing faster and more erratically. Alvin watched as the objects in the walls, the ring, the bear, the drawing, all melted into the walls like wax. He shouted, but nothing came out. Then something moved above him. A vertical slit of light opened far up the curved ceiling. Kendra's belly button door was still barely open. And just beyond it, far away and fading, he could feel her. He closed his eyes and pressed his hand flat against the floor. Kendra's heart was still pulsing erratically beneath him, still beating, but more chaotically now. A memory surged up through his mind. The feel of her hand on his back when he was sick at age 6. The sound of her singing while folding laundry. The whisper of "I'm here" in the middle of a thunderstorm. And through the memories, something pulled him up towards her belly button. His mother knew what was going on. Somewhere in the waking world his mother sensed him. Not just that he was in the house or asleep, but in her. And she was trying to reach him. With new strength he stood up. The chamber trembled violently now. Steam gushed from the walls. The ground split open in veins of glowing pink heat. The air thickened to the consistency of molasses syrup. He pressed forward, pushing through the molasses-thick humidity, toward where he felt the signal strongest. He thought, always up. Then he saw it. The vertical slit of light that had opened in the ceiling earlier was his only exit out of here. Far above, barely visible through the haze. He could see that it was stretching wider. It pulsed wider and wider as the edges of the slit were trembling as it stretched open wider. Kendra was doing it. She was trying to open her belly button again from the outside. But the space around him resisted. As if the deeper layers of her body's memories didn't want to let him go. The inner self of his mother had grown used to holding him. It didn't want to lose him again the way Kendra lost Alvin once to the cruel outside world. The walls convulsed. Steam roared. The air seared against his skin. Alvin broke into a run. Each step was a slog through thickening air. The ground wobbled under him. Objects melted and reformed in the walls. He watched as baby toys, forgotten socks, the first birthday card he'd ever drawn her, all slid down the slippery walls of her body into the digestive juices. But he kept moving. At the far end of the chamber, a fleshy rise began to form. From the top he could almost reach the light. He scrambled upward. The ground squelched beneath him, oozing warmth. Slippery veins of memory tried to tangle around his feet. He slipped once, then twice, but each time pulled himself up, hand over hand, with a connection to his mother at the forefront of his thoughts. He reached the summit just as the light above began to pulse in time with his heartbeat. The slit of Kendra's belly button was now a swirling tunnel, stretching down toward him. The heat in the chamber roared around him, but the light of the exit grew bigger with each step. Through it, he heard the faint sound of her voice, not with his ears but inside his mind. "Alvin, you're in there. I feel you, come back to me." With the last of his strength, he leapt. The heat of the dream tried to claw him back, a final convulsion of steaming air and melting memory, but he soared upward into the light, his body stretching like mist as he passed through the tunnel. The world flashed white as he took the final step out of his mother navel, grabbing both sides of his mother's fleshy skin with both his hands as he pulled himself out. Exhausted from his travels, Alvin lay beside his mother and fell asleep in her arms. Her fingers moved in spirals around his navel for the rest of the night. The next morning it seemed like nothing had happened, and yet something had. Alvin began to spend more time with his mother again, and asked his mom to tell him stories at bedtime just like she used to. Alvin would get into bed an hour early just to have his mom trace circles around his belly button once again. Kendra smiled at the amazing night she had with her son and felt gratitude for being able to spend time with her baby boy once again just like good old times. The days that followed were slower and more gentler. Alvin didn't try so hard to feel grown up. He stopped searching for the perfect person to fill the emptiness. Instead, he began to notice the quiet spaces in people. The parts that wanted to be understood, not fixed. And one day, in a small, unspectacular moment, someone poked his belly button and laughed. "I think you've got a dream door in there," she said, teasing as she traced the outline of his belly button. Alvin smiled softly, his eyes flickering with memories of his mother. "Yeah," he said. "I think I do."